50 hyenas versus 4 lions, the most brutal clash ever filmed. The buffalo carcass was still warm when they lost it. 4 lions, 1 male, 3 females. They'd brought down an old Cape buffalo bull near a dried-out waterhole about 6 miles east of the Savuti Channel in northern Botswana. A kill that took 47 minutes of suffocation hold. The male's jaws locked on the bull's muzzle while the females opened the belly and the animal's back legs still kicked at nothing. The dust cloud from the struggle hung in the air like smoke from a grass fire. Blood turned the sand dark in a circle wider than a pickup truck. They'd earned that kill, paid for it in bruises and horn gouges and the kind of full-body exhaustion that makes a 500-pound lion lie flat on his side, ribs heaving, eyes half closed, too spent to eat what he just killed. The laughing started 17 minutes later. Not one voice, not 5. A rolling wave of sound that came from the east and kept building. The high, broken, almost human cackle of spotted hyenas on the move. And if you've never heard it in person, I need you to understand something. On a nature documentary, with your TV speakers and your couch and your bag of chips, hyena laughter sounds quirky, interesting, almost funny. In the African bush at dusk, when you can't see past 60 yards and the sound is coming from everywhere and the pitch keeps climbing, it sounds like the dark itself is laughing at you. It gets into the base of your skull. Your hands sweat. Your chest tightens. Every prey animal within half a mile goes silent, because that sound means something very specific in the Kalahari ecosystem. A mob is coming, and the mob is hungry. Kamau heard them first. That was the male, the dominant. 11 years old, which in lion years is late career, past his prime breeding window, deep into the phase where every territorial challenge costs more than it used to and heals slower than it should. He was big, 520 pounds in the wet season, maybe 490 now at the tail end of the dry. His mane was dark, almost black around the jawline, fading to tawny brown at the edges, and it carried scars the way an old leather jacket carries creases. A notch in his left ear from a fight 3 years ago. A bald patch on his right shoulder where a buffalo horn had torn the skin down to muscle and the mane never grew back. He lifted his head from the carcass, blood on his muzzle on his chest, matting the mane hair into wet spikes. His nostrils flared, his ears rotated, not both the same direction, each one tracking independently, triangulating the source of that sound. East and southeast and northeast, they were spreading. The first hyena appeared at the edge of the firelight, except there was no fire. It was the last orange band of sunset on the horizon, and the hyena's silhouette cut across it like a hole punched in the sky. Rounded ears, sloped back, that forward-leaning posture that makes them look like they're always walking downhill. Then another, and 6 more behind those. They came out of the scrub in clusters, 2s and 3s, emerging from different angles. And if you'd watched it from above, you'd have seen a pattern that looked less like animals arriving and more like a net closing. The Savuti hyena clan was one of the largest documented in the region, 40 to 50 adults at full strength, run by a matriarch named, well, she didn't have a name. Researchers from the Botswana Predator Conservation Trust had tagged her as female 17, but that's a catalog number, not an identity. I'll call her what the local guides called her, the Duchess. She weighed 143 pounds, bigger than most of her clan, which meant bigger than almost every spotted hyena in southern Africa. Her jaw could generate over 1,100 psi of bite force, enough to crack a giraffe femur like a breadstick. Her coat was dark, the spots faded with age into a pattern that looked more like mud spatters than the neat rosettes of a younger animal. She moved with the slow confidence of something that has never needed to run from anything except a bigger group of her own kind. The Duchess didn't charge. She didn't need to. She walked to within 40 yards of the carcass, sat down, and started calling. The whoop. Not the laugh. The whoop. A long rising vocalization that carries over 2 miles of open savanna and functions as a single clear message to every hyena in the clan. I found food. Come now. The response was immediate. More whoops, overlapping, echoing off the mopane woodland to the north. More shapes in the scrub. The count climbed. 20, 25, 30. Kamau stood over the carcass. His body language had shifted from exhaustion to something harder. Chest forward, head low, shoulders bunched. The mane made him look bigger than he was, which was the evolutionary point. A male lion's mane is a billboard. It says, "Calculate the cost before you commit." The 3 females flanked him. Nala, the eldest, 8 years old, lean and scarred, a veteran of more kills and more fights than any lioness in the pride, took his left. She was limping. The buffalo had caught her right rear leg with a kick during the takedown, and the knee joint was swollen to twice its normal size. She could stand. She could probably fight. She couldn't run. Sefu took the right. Younger, 6, faster. She had the nervous energy of a fighter who knows a brawl is coming and wants it started before the adrenaline fades. Zuri held the rear. The youngest at 4, still learning the geometry of confrontation, still figuring out when to press and when to pull back. Her ears were flat. Her tail was low. She was scared. That's not an insult. It's intelligence. 4 lions against 30 hyenas is a losing equation, and Zuri was the only one doing the math correctly. The first charge came from the right. 8 hyenas. Fast, tight formation. They came in low, snapping, aiming for the hindquarters. Always the hindquarters. Because a lion facing you is a lion that can kill you, but a lion's back end is just meat with a tail. Sefu spun, met them with a roar that cracked the air like a whip, and a paw swipe that caught the lead hyena across the muzzle. The hyena yelped, a high, sharp sound like a dog stepped on, and veered off. The others scattered, regrouped 10 yards out. Second charge, left side. 6 hyenas targeting Nala, and they knew she was hurt. The limp, the swollen knee. Predators don't miss that kind of detail. They're reading body language the way a poker player reads tells, and a limping lioness in a territorial dispute is a queen with a cracked crown. Nala met them anyway. She couldn't pivot on the bad leg, so she did something I've only seen old fighters do. She dropped her center of gravity, planted the good legs, and swung her entire body like a gate. Her right paw, claws extended, 5 hooks of keratin backed by 30 pounds of force, caught a hyena in the ribs. The animal went sideways, hit the ground, didn't get up immediately, but the attack wasn't a real attack. It was a probe. The hyenas were testing, measuring response time, identifying the weak points, counting the defenders. Classic mobbing behavior. They'd do this for 20 minutes, 30, an hour if needed, rotating attackers, keeping the lions spinning, never committing enough force to trigger a real fight but never backing off enough to let the lions rest. It's exhausting. That's the strategy. Hyenas don't beat lions with strength. They beat them with cardio and numbers and the patience to wait until the bigger animal is too tired to swing. The third charge was the real one. 41 hyenas. The full clan, minus a few juveniles hanging back in the scrub. They came from 3 directions simultaneously, east, north, and south, and the sound they made was something that doesn't translate to words. A wall of cackling, whooping, snarling noise that hit the lions like a physical force. The air vibrated with it. The ground felt different. Kamau charged into the eastern group. He was fast, faster than a 500-pound animal has any right to be, and his first impact scattered 6 hyenas like bowling pins, but the others closed behind him, snapping at his haunches, his tail, the backs of his legs. One got a grip on his left shoulder, the one with the bald patch where the mane didn't grow, and bit down. Kamau roared, not the territorial roar, the pain roar, shorter, rawer. He spun, shook the hyena loose, felt the skin tear as the teeth ripped free. Blood ran hot down his foreleg. The females were overwhelmed. Nala went down on the bad knee, and 3 hyenas were on her before she could recover. One on her back, one at her flank, one trying to get to her throat. She rolled, crushed the one on her back with her weight, clawed the flanker. But the third one opened a gash on her hip that bled freely into the dust. Sefu was fighting on pure adrenaline, spinning, slashing, roaring, keeping a circle of empty space around her through sheer violence, but the circle was shrinking. 6 hyenas, 8, 10, each one darting in, snapping, retreating before her claws could connect. Zuri broke. I don't say that as a judgment. She was 4 years old. She'd never faced a clan this size. The noise, the chaos, the smell of blood, her own pride's blood, was more than her nervous system could process. She backed up, then turned, then ran. 2 hyenas chased her for 80 yards, snapping at her heels, and peeled off when she cleared the engagement zone. They didn't need to catch her. They needed her gone. One less defender. The fight lasted 11 more minutes after Zuri left. 11 minutes of escalating brutality. Kamau bleeding from 4 wounds, Nala barely standing, Sefu's left ear torn half off, before the math became undeniable. Kamau disengaged first. He backed off the carcass, slowly, still facing the hyenas, still growling, but retreating. The universal admission in the animal kingdom. This isn't worth dying for. Nala followed. Sefu followed Nala. The hyenas swarmed the carcass. The laughing exploded, a chorus of 40-plus voices celebrating in the only way hyenas know how, which sounds like a psych ward at midnight and carries for miles across flat ground. The sound did something to the air, changed the texture of the night. Every zebra within a mile shifted on its feet. Every impala herd tightened formation. Even the insects, the crickets, the beetles, the cicadas that form the constant background hum of the African bush, went quiet for a few seconds, as if the savanna was holding its breath, deciding whose side it was on. A jackal that had been trailing the original hunt from 200 yards out stopped, raised its narrow face, listened to the hyena chorus, and turned around. Not tonight. Not worth it. The lions walked into the darkness, Kamau in front, blood dripping from his shoulder into the sand, leaving a trail of dark spots that the hyenas would smell for days. His head was low. His stride was short. Not defeat, exactly. Retreat. There's a difference. But on that night, in that dust, it was hard to see it. Behind them, the carcass disappeared under a pile of spotted bodies. The sounds of feeding, bone cracking, wet tearing, the grunts and squeals of 40 animals competing for the best pieces, filled the space where the lions had been. And across the Savuti plain, the message traveled at the speed of sound. Every jackal, every wild dog, every honey badger and leopard and vulture roosting in the mapine trees heard it. The hyenas own this ground tonight. But tonight is not forever. 3 days after the fight, Kamau hadn't eaten. Not because there was no food. The Savuti floodplain in September sits at the intersection of dying water and migrating herds. Wildebeest, zebra, impala, moving south toward the Linyanti corridor, funneled through gaps in the woodland like traffic through a toll booth. Prey was everywhere. Easy prey, some of it. Young zebras, limping wildebeest. The kind of targets a healthy pride picks off without breaking a sweat. Kamau wasn't hunting. He was patrolling. Every morning before dawn, he walked his territorial boundary. 2 miles north along the dry channel, east through the mopane belt, south to the clay pan where the ground turned white and cracked like old paint, west along the tree line where the Savuti marsh used to hold water before the river changed course and left nothing but cracked mud and dead palms. 8 miles, every day, on a shoulder wound that had swelled to the size of a man's fist and leaked a thin, yellowish fluid that attracted flies and stuck to his mane in clumps. He didn't walk fast. He didn't need to. The patrol wasn't about speed. It was about scent. Every 200 yards, Kamau stopped, scraped the ground with his back feet, 4 long gouges in the dirt, deep enough to reach damp soil. Then he sprayed, urine laced with territorial markers so potent that a human nose can detect them from 30 feet away, and a hyena nose can read them from a quarter mile. The chemical message was precise. I am here. I am male. I am not leaving. He sprayed on termite mounds, on fallen logs, on the base of every large tree along the boundary. He scraped and sprayed and scraped and sprayed with the relentless focus of a man painting a fence. Systematic, thorough, covering every inch. The wound leaked while he walked, a thin trail of yellowish discharge that ran down his foreleg and dried in the dust, leaving dark spots on the sand every few yards. Flies followed him, a buzzing halo of green bottle flies that landed on the wound and lifted off and landed again. Persistent, parasitic, the kind of minor torment that would make a weaker animal stop and lick and stop and lick until it lost half the morning. Kamau ignored them. He'd ignored worse. A buffalo horn through the shoulder muscle, a rival male's canines in his haunch during a territorial fight 4 years ago. The flies were nothing. The flies were weather. But the heat concerned him. Not the air temperature, the wound temperature. The skin around the tear was hot, swollen, tight, the kind of heat that means bacteria have found a home and are multiplying, building pressure, turning healthy tissue into something soft and wrong. Kamau couldn't know this in words. He knew it in sensation. The wound throbbed with his heartbeat, each throb a fraction hotter than the last. He kept walking. He kept marking. I talked to a wildlife researcher in Maun who'd studied the Savuti prides for 9 years. She told me something that stuck. People think roaring is how lions claim territory. It's not. Roaring is advertising. Scent marking is the legal document. When a male patrols and marks like that, obsessively, daily, injured, he's not just saying, "This is mine." He's saying, "I will bleed to keep it." And every predator in the area understands the difference. Kamau bled, and he kept marking. The shoulder wound worried Nala. I don't mean that the way a person worries, wringing hands, losing sleep, imagining worst cases. Nala's concern expressed itself through proximity. She stayed close, closer than normal. When Kamau rested, which he did more often now, his breathing heavier, his body running hot with the low-grade infection building in the shoulder, Nala lay within touching distance. Sometimes she groomed the wound, her rough tongue on the torn skin, cleaning it the way cats have cleaned each other's wounds for 30 million years, pulling out dirt and dead tissue and the tiny larvae of botflies that tried to colonize the open flesh. Kamau let her. He didn't let anyone else near it. When Sefu approached once, curious, he turned his head and showed teeth. Not a snarl. A reminder. My wound. My business. Nala gets a pass because Nala has earned a pass through 8 years of shared kills and shared fights and the accumulated trust of a partnership that predates human agriculture. Sefu backed off. Got the message. Zuri came back on the second day. She appeared at the edge of the Mopane woodland at dawn, her body low, her ears flat, her tail dragging, the posture of submission, the posture of a lion saying, "I ran. I know I ran. I'm here now." Kamau saw her, held her gaze for a long 10 seconds, then looked away. That was it. No confrontation, no punishment. Lions don't do grudges the way humans imagine. Zuri's flight during the battle wasn't a betrayal. It was a survival response. Young lionesses run from overwhelming odds. It's coded into them. The ones who don't run die young and don't reproduce, and evolution doesn't care about bravery. It cares about grandchildren. But something had shifted. Zuri's position in the pride's internal hierarchy, invisible to the casual observer but rigid as concrete to the lions themselves, had dropped. She ate last now. She rested at the perimeter, not the center. Small changes, meaningful ones. She accepted them without protest. That was her intelligence showing. On the 4th day, Nala did something unusual. She left, not far, and not alone. Sefu went with her. They headed northeast, away from the core territory, into a transitional zone where the Mopane woodland thinned and the grass grew tall enough to hide a crouching lioness. This was border country, the overlap zone where Kamau's territory brushed against the home range of a smaller, semi-nomadic group. 2 adult females and a subadult male who'd been drifting along the eastern edge for months. These 3 weren't strangers. They were pride fragments. Same genetic lineage, same mother pride from the Linyanti area, scattered by a territorial takeover 2 years earlier when a coalition of younger males had pushed the old dominant out and the pride had splintered. Nala had ended up with Kamau. The other 2 females, I'll call them Imara and Desta, had drifted east with the subadult, a 3-year-old male named Tau, who was all legs and half a mane, and the kind of reckless confidence that comes from being too young to know what you don't know. Nala found them at a waterhole, a shallow depression in the clay where rainwater collected and held for a few weeks after the last storm. Imara was drinking. Desta was lying in the shade of a leadwood tree, her belly rounded with what looked like early pregnancy. Tau was 200 yards out, stalking a warthog with the intensity of a cat watching a laser pointer and the success rate to match. The reunion was not dramatic. Lions don't run toward each other with open arms and swelling music. Nala approached. Imara lifted her head. They stared at each other for a long time. Then Nala walked forward and pressed her forehead against Imara's cheek. Head rubbing. The lion handshake. The exchange of scent that says, "I know you. You know me. We are the same." Imara's body relaxed. A visible shift, the muscles along her spine unclenching, her tail dropping from alert to neutral, her breathing slowing from the shallow pant of a wary animal to the deep, steady rhythm of one that has just been reminded it's not alone. She rubbed back, her cheek against Nala's jaw, then her flank along Nala's side, the full-body contact that deposits scent from the sebaceous glands along the entire length of the torso. They stood like that for a long time, pressed together, not moving, just breathing each other's scent, relearning it, updating the file, 2 years apart. In lion terms, that's a lifetime. Prides fracture all the time. Males get ousted, females scatter, groups split along fault lines of kinship and opportunity. Most fragments never reunite. They drift into new territories, join new prides, build new alliances. The old bonds dissolve like salt in rain, but not always. Not this time. Sefu hung back, watching. Desta watched from the shade. Her swollen belly caught the light when she shifted position. Tight skin, the cubs inside may be 4 weeks from arriving. Pregnant lionesses are cautious by nature. Everything in Desta's biology was screaming protect, conserve, avoid risk. But Nala's scent, familiar, coded with 2 years of shared hunts and shared kills and the genetic markers of shared blood, overrode the caution. Desta stood, walked over, pressed her head against Nala's shoulder. Tao missed the entire thing because the warthog had gone underground and Tao was trying to dig it out with his front paws, which was never going to work, but he didn't know that yet. Over the next 2 days, something happened that wildlife biologists call pride reconsolidation, and regular people call getting the band back together. Nala led Imara and Desta, and eventually Tao, once he gave up on the warthog, back toward the core territory. Slowly, with frequent stops. The integration wasn't instant. Kamau had to accept the newcomers, which meant a tense 20-minute standoff where the big male circled Tao 3 times, sniffing, evaluating, deciding whether this young male was a reinforcement or a threat. Tao made it easy. He rolled onto his back, exposed his belly and throat, the most vulnerable posture a male lion can adopt, and the clearest possible signal. I am not challenging you. I am not here for your females. I am here because the lioness who raised me brought me here, and I will follow her rules and yours. Kamau sniffed him, stood over him for a long 5 seconds, then walked away. Acceptance. Now the pride was 6. 1 dominant male, 1 subadult male, 4 adult females. Still not a large pride by Savuti standards. Some of the bigger groups ran 8 to 12 adults, but a functional one. Coordinated, rested, with a score to settle and a leader patient enough to wait for the right moment to settle it. Kamau didn't rush. He patrolled. He marked. He let the shoulder heal. Slowly, badly, the wound closing over a pocket of infection that would probably shorten his life by a year, but wouldn't stop him from doing what needed to be done. He waited. The hyenas noticed the change. They noticed everything. A clan of 50 doesn't survive in a landscape full of lions, leopards, and wild dogs without reading the political situation the way a diplomat reads a room. The Duchess had scouts. Not formal scouts. Hyenas don't have military ranks. But individuals whose habitual ranging patterns took them past the lion territory every few days. They came back smelling like lion urine. Fresh lion urine. More of it than before. The Duchess processed this information the way she processed everything, without visible reaction. She kept her clan fed. She kept her territory defended. She kept the carcass-stealing operation running, hitting lion kills when the numbers favored her, backing off when they didn't. But she stopped pushing west. The boundary that she'd tested after the big fight, moving her clan's feeding range a half-mile into Kamau's territory, she pulled back to the old line, quietly, without fanfare. If you asked me to translate that into English, it would be something like, I won the battle, but the army across the border just got bigger. Let's not get greedy. Smart. The Duchess was always smart, but smart has limits when the other side isn't playing the same game anymore. 11 days after the defeat, the moon was 3/4 full, hanging over the Savuti like a dented coin, throwing enough light to see shapes but not details. The kind of light where a tree stump looks like a crouching animal, and a crouching animal looks like a tree stump. Dangerous light. Deceptive. Kamau was lying on a low rise, maybe 15 feet above the surrounding plain, a gravel mound topped with dead grass that the locals called a lookout kopje, even though it was barely taller than a man. His chin rested on his front paws. His eyes were open. The shoulder wound had crusted over, leaving a dark, ridged scab that pulled when he moved but no longer leaked. He was listening. If you've been with me this far, you need to understand something about lion hearing that most documentaries skip. A lion can detect prey movement at over a mile in open savanna. Their ears rotate independently, like satellite dishes on a swivel mount. and the auditory processing center in their brain is proportionally larger than a human's. Kamau wasn't just hearing the night, he was reading it. Every rustle, every footfall, every shift in the wind carried information that his brain sorted, categorized, and filed. At 9:47 p.m., I'm using researcher timestamps from GPS collar data, so the precision is real. He heard it. Agitation, east, about 1.25 miles. Not hyena laughter, not whooping. Something rawer. The grunting, snarling, high-pitched squealing of a large predator mob in active pursuit. Mixed into it, lower, heavier, more desperate, the bellowing of a Cape buffalo. The hyenas were hunting. Kamau's ears locked east, both of them. His head came up, slowly, the way a man lifts binoculars when he spotted something worth watching. Nala was 30 feet away, lying in the grass with Imara. Both females' heads came up at the same moment, synchronized, automatic, the way a flock of birds turns in unison. They'd heard it too. Sefu was already standing, her body rigid, tail straight back, the hunting posture, but pointed in the wrong direction, toward the hyenas, not toward prey. Desta was grooming Tau behind the kopje. She stopped. Tau's half-mane bristled. Zuri, at the perimeter, raised her head and looked at Kamau. Just looked, waiting. 6 lions, all awake, all facing east, all listening to the same sound. The buffalo fight lasted 23 minutes. Sam could hear it degrading, the buffalo's bellows getting weaker, shorter, more ragged, the hyena vocalizations getting louder, more excited, the pitch climbing the way it always does when a kill is close. Then a sound like a heavy bag of wet sand hitting the ground, the buffalo going down, followed by the feeding frenzy. The snarling and cracking and tearing that means 40-plus jaws are competing for the same carcass. No, wait, not Sam. I slipped. Nobody named Sam is in this story. That's a different one. My mistake. The kind of thing that happens when you've been sitting with these stories too long and the details bleed between them. The buffalo fight lasted 23 minutes. Kamau could hear it degrading. He didn't move. Nala looked at him. The kind of look that carries a question without sound. Now? Kamau didn't respond. His eyes stayed east. His breathing was slow, measured. The breathing of an animal that is not reacting to a situation, but managing one. 30 minutes passed. The feeding sounds continued, but they were changing, slowing. The initial frenzy was burning off. Individual hyenas were pulling pieces of the carcass away from the group, dragging legs and ribs into the scrub to eat alone. The clan was dispersing, spreading out. The tight, coordinated mob that had brought down a buffalo was dissolving into 40-plus individuals focused on their own stomachs. This was the moment. Kamau stood. The movement was unhurried. He stretched, front legs first, then back, the way cats do, the shoulder wound pulling but holding. He shook his mane. Dust and grass fragments scattered in the moonlight. Then he walked east. Not trotted. Walked. The pace of a king approaching a throne room, not a soldier charging a position. Nala fell in on his left, Imara on his right. Sifu and Desta behind them staggered, forming a loose V that widened as they moved. Tau took the rear, the position furthest from the action, appropriate for a subadult who hadn't earned a frontline spot yet but close enough to learn. Zuri hesitated. 3 seconds. 4. Then she moved. She took a position outside the V on the left flank, wider than the others. A buffer, an outrider. The position she'd chosen for herself, or the position the Pride had assigned her after the retreat. Either way, she was there. 6 lions moving through the Savuti grassland in formation. No sound. The grass parted around their bodies and closed behind them like water around a ship's hull. The moonlight turned their coats silver gold and their eyes into green gold discs that floated above the grass line like lanterns. They covered the 1.25 miles in 14 minutes. The hyena kill site was in a shallow depression, a seasonal water hole that had dried to a cracked pan of gray mud. The buffalo carcass lay in the center, already reduced to a rib cage and spine and a few scattered pieces. Hyenas were everywhere, some feeding, some lying nearby with distended bellies, some squabbling over scraps. The Duchess was 50 yards east, eating a hindquarter she'd claimed for herself, her back to the approaching lions. The wind was from the west, blowing the lion's scent away from the hyenas. Carrying the hyena's scent, blood, bile, stomach contents, the rank musk of 40-plus predators, directly into Kamau's face. He processed it without reaction, filed it, kept walking. At 300 yards, the first hyena saw them. It was a young female on the northern edge of the kill site, gnawing on a femur. She looked up, froze. Her jaws stopped moving. The bone hung from her mouth like a cigar. She whooped, once, loud. The effect was instant. Every hyena at the kill site snapped to attention. Heads up, ears forward, bodies orienting toward the sound, and then past the sound, toward the 6 shapes emerging from the grassland in a line that stretched 40 yards wide. The Duchess dropped her hindquarter, turned, saw. She didn't panic. She was too experienced for panic, but her body language shifted. Weight rearward, haunches tensing, the posture of an animal recalculating odds that just changed dramatically. Last time, it was 4 lions, tired, 1 injured, 1 young. This time, it was 6, fresh, organized, moving with the deliberate, synchronized precision of a group that had spent 11 days doing nothing but waiting for this exact moment. Kamau stopped at 200 yards. The pride stopped with him. Not a command, a response. They read his body the way musicians read a conductor. When he stopped, they stopped. When he breathed, they breathed. The moment stretched. 200 yards of open ground between 6 lions and 40 hyenas, lit by a moon that threw every shadow sharp and made every shape look larger than it was. The grass between them was short, cropped by zebra and wildebeest, barely ankle-high, which meant there was nowhere to hide. No ambush, no deception. Just open ground and 2 groups of predators staring at each other across it. A hyena on the left flank broke first. Whooped. The sound cracked the silence like a rock through glass. 3 others joined. A ragged chorus that was supposed to be intimidation, but sounded in this context more like panic leaking through a mask. Kamau didn't react. His eyes, amber, flat, reflecting the moonlight in 2 steady discs, stayed locked on the center of the clan. On the Duchess. On the animal that had led the mob, that had driven him off his own kill. Bleeding, humiliated, 11 days ago. The pride waited. Sefu's muscles were vibrating, visible tremors running along her flanks, the restraint of a fighter on a leash. Desta was calm. Imara was calm. Nala's bad knee was tucked slightly beneath her, weight redistributed, ready. Tao was panting, hard. His half-mane stood on end. He looked like a scared kid at the front of a roller coaster, terrified and committed in equal measure. Zuri was still, completely still, the stillness of something that has already decided. He lifted his head, and he roared. Not the distance roar, the one that carries 5 miles and says, "I exist." This was the close roar, the combat roar, the sound that comes from the diaphragm and the chest cavity and the resonating chamber of a skull, designed to amplify low-frequency sound waves to a volume that registers on seismographic equipment. 114 decibels at 1 meter. Louder than a chainsaw, louder than a rock concert. A sound you don't hear so much as feel. In your teeth, in your sternum, in the part of your brain that still remembers what it was like to be prey. Nala joined, then Imara, then Sefu, Desta, Tao, his voice cracking, not fully mature, but loud enough. 6 lions roaring in unison. The sound rolled across the Savuti plain like thunder from a storm that was already overhead. The ground vibrated, the grass bent. A flock of red-billed quilius, tiny birds that roost in the mopane by the thousands, exploded from the tree line in a single dark cloud, wheeling against the moon, their wings making a sound like a deck of cards being shuffled by a giant. The hyenas heard it the way a man hears a gunshot in a quiet room. Total, paralyzing. Every body frozen, every set of eyes fixed on the source of that sound, every survival calculation running at maximum speed. Kamau started walking again. The charge didn't come from the front. It came from the sides. Nala and Imara peeled left. Sefu and Desta peeled right. A coordinated pincer that widened the V into a crescent, sweeping around the flanks of the kill site, cutting off the escape routes that the hyenas had used 11 days ago to surround and overwhelm. This time, the geometry was reversed. The encirclers were being encircled. The Duchess saw it happening. She whooped, rapid, staccato, the emergency call that tells the clan to form up, tighten ranks, present a unified front. The response was sloppy. Half the clan was scattered across a 100-yard radius, bellies full, some of them still chewing. They weren't ready. You can't go from feeding mode to combat mode in 3 seconds. The physiological switch. Blood flow redirecting from the digestive system to the muscles. Adrenaline spiking. The brain shifting from "where's the best piece" to "where's the nearest threat." Takes time. Kamau didn't give them time. He came straight up the middle. No deception. No flanking. A direct, linear advance toward the center of the kill site at a pace that accelerated from a walk to a trot to a run that covered the last 100 yards in under 8 seconds. 500 pounds of scarred, furious 11-year-old lion moving at 35 miles per hour toward the densest cluster of hyenas. The impact was not a collision, it was a detonation. Kamau hit the first hyena with his right paw, an open-handed strike that connected with the animal's ribcage and sent it tumbling sideways into 2 others. The second hyena lunged for his bad shoulder. He caught it mid-air with his jaws. Not a killing bite, not yet. Just a grip on the back of the neck that lifted the 80-pound animal off the ground and slammed it down. The hyena screamed, a sound like tearing metal. He released it, moved forward. Another swipe. Another hyena knocked sprawling. The dust rose around him in a cloud that turned the moonlight brown. Blood, not his, not yet, sprayed across the dry mud of the waterhole in dark arcs that looked black in the half-light. The sound was close and ugly. Not the clean crack of a single bite. The wet, blunt, overlapping chaos of large bodies hitting each other at speed. Grunts, snarls, the dull thud of paw on ribcage, the sharper crack of jaws snapping shut on empty air. A hyena got behind him, bit his right haunch. Kamau spun, faster than a 500-pound animal should be able to spin, and caught the hyena with a backhanded swipe that connected with its skull. The animal dropped, twitched, went still. He didn't check if it was dead. He kept moving. He wasn't trying to kill, not systematically. He was breaking their formation, punching holes in the cluster, creating chaos, turning a group of 40 into 40 individuals. Because a group of 40 hyenas is dangerous, 40 individual hyenas are just loud. Nala and Imara hit the left flank simultaneously. Nala, limping still, the knee swollen but functional, drove into a group of 6 hyenas that were trying to form up. Her method was different from Kamau's. Where he used blunt force, she used precision. A slash across a muzzle here, a bite on a haunch there. Targeted, specific, designed not to kill but to injure just enough to make the target choose flight over fight. Imara backed her up. Younger, faster, she caught the hyenas that tried to loop around Nala's bad side, anticipating the flanking move before it happened, cutting it off with a snarl and a charge that sent 3 hyenas scattering into the grass. On the right, Sefu was in her element. She'd been the most aggressive fighter during the original defeat, and 11 days of frustration had sharpened her into something close to reckless. She charged a cluster of 8 hyenas, roaring, and didn't stop when they scattered. She pursued the closest one for 30 yards, caught it, and pinned it with both front paws. The hyena thrashed. Sefu held it for 4 seconds, long enough to deliver a bite to the shoulder that would leave a scar but not kill, then released it and turned back to the group. Desta covered Sefu's back. Quieter, more cautious, she positioned herself between Sefu's charges and the main body of the clan, blocking any counterattack that tried to exploit Sefu's forward position. Tao, the subadult, the kid, did something no one expected. He went after the Duchess. Whether it was instinct, stupidity, or some 3-year-old male's need to prove himself in front of a pride he'd just joined, Tao broke from the rear position and sprinted toward the matriarch. She was standing 50 yards east, calling her clan, trying to organize a defensive formation. She saw Tao coming. She didn't run. She turned to face him. The Duchess was 143 pounds of experience. Tao was 260 of inexperience. She should have been outmatched. She wasn't. When Tao lunged, she sidestepped, a move that would have looked lazy if it weren't so perfectly timed, and bit down on his right foreleg. Hard. Tao yelped, stumbled. His charge collapsed into a tangle of legs and dust. The Duchess stood over him for half a second, looking down, her eyes flat, evaluating. Then Zuri hit her from the side. Zuri, the one who ran, the one who broke, the one who'd spent 11 days at the perimeter of the Pride, eating last, sleeping farthest from the center. The young lioness who'd done the smart math during the first fight and chosen survival over courage. She chose differently this time. She came from the Duchess's blind side, the left, where the matriarch's attention was locked on Tao. At full sprint, 130 pounds of 4-year-old lioness moving at 30 miles per hour, her paws barely touching the ground, her body stretched long and low, every muscle firing in the sequence that evolution spent 30 million years perfecting. She didn't roar, didn't warn, didn't make a sound until the moment of impact. She body-checked the Duchess the way a linebacker hits a quarterback on the blind side. Full contact, shoulder to ribs, all momentum transferred in a single, bone-shaking instant. The Duchess's feet left the ground, all four of them. For a fraction of a second, a 143-pound hyena matriarch was airborne, and the look in her eyes, if you could have frozen that moment, if you could have put a camera 6 inches from her face, was not pain. It was surprise. Pure, unprocessed surprise. The expression of an animal that has spent its entire life being the smartest thing in every room and has just discovered that intelligence doesn't stop physics. The Duchess went down, rolled, came up snarling. But Tao was back on his feet now, and Zuri was between them, and the math had changed. 2 lions to 1 hyena. The Duchess was smart. She was always smart. She ran, not far, 60 yards, to where a cluster of her clan was regrouping. But she ran. The matriarch ran, and every hyena that saw it understood what it meant. If she runs, we run. The collapse was fast, not instantaneous. Hyenas are too stubborn for instantaneous anything, but fast. The organized resistance that the Duchess had been trying to build fell apart in under 2 minutes. Individuals broke and scattered. Small groups peeled off and disappeared into the darkness. The whooping and cackling shifted pitch, from aggression to alarm to the high, desperate contact calls of animals trying to find each other in the chaos. I want you to picture this from above. If you were in a helicopter, 100 feet up, looking down with a thermal camera, you'd see a tight cluster of orange shapes in the center exploding outward like a firework, streaks of heat radiating in every direction, and in the middle, 6 larger shapes, stationary, holding the ground. The hyenas ran east, northeast, southeast, every direction that wasn't toward the 6 lions standing in the moonlight over a pile of buffalo bones. Some ran alone. Some ran in pairs, shoulder to shoulder, the buddy system of panicked animals seeking safety in numbers that no longer existed. A few stopped after 100 yards, turned, looked back, evaluating. Could they regroup? Could they counter? The answer came from the kill site. Another roar, Kamau's, followed by Nala's, followed by the combined vocalization of 6 lions holding their ground. And the hesitation ended. They ran. Kamau stood in the center of the kill site, blood on his paws, not his. His mane was wild, spiked with dust and saliva, and his chest heaved with the effort of the charge. His shoulder wound had reopened, a dark line of fresh blood visible against the scab, but he didn't favor it. He stood square, both front feet planted, head high. He roared again, this time alone. Just him. One voice, one sound, rolling across the Savuti, over the mopane woodland, past the dry channel, into the darkness where 40-plus hyenas were running and regrouping and recalculating every assumption they'd made about who owned this piece of Africa. 2 hyenas lay injured on the ground near the carcass, one with a crushed rib cage from Kamau's paw strike, breathing in short, wet gasps, the other with Sefu's bite mark on its shoulder, dragging itself toward the scrub on 3 legs. Neither was dead. Neither would fight again tonight. The rest were gone, scattered into the grass and the moonlight and the vast, indifferent darkness of the Botswana bush. The carcass, what was left of it, lay between Kamau's front paws. He didn't eat. He just stood there. Kamau stood over the carcass until sunrise, not eating, not resting, standing. His shadow stretched west as the moon tracked overhead, then shortened, then disappeared as the first gray light seeped into the sky from the east. 5 hours. On a reopened wound, on legs that had just carried 500 pounds at 35 miles per hour into a wall of hyenas. He stood because the carcass wasn't the point. The ground was the point. Nala understood this. She positioned herself 100 yards north, not guarding the food, guarding the perimeter. She lay in the grass with her chin on her paws, her bad knee tucked beneath her, her eyes sweeping the northern tree line in slow, patient arcs. Every 20 minutes she stood, walked 50 yards east, urinated, scraped the ground, and returned, marking, reinforcing. Imara took the south. Same routine, same patience. The 2 females bracketed the kill site like bookends, their scent marks overlapping with Kamau's in a chemical boundary that any predator with a functional nose could read from a quarter mile. Occupied territory. Defended. Current. Sefu patrolled. She couldn't be still. She'd burned through her adrenaline during the fight, and now she was running on the fumes, her body still wired for action, her muscles twitching with residual energy. She walked the eastern perimeter in wide loops, covering ground, checking the scrub, occasionally stopping to sniff a hyena track and curl her lip in the flamin' response, that open-mouthed grimace cats make when they're analyzing a scent, pulling air over the Jacobson's organ in the roof of the mouth. Desta rested near the carcass. She'd fought conservatively during the attack, and her body showed it. No visible injuries, no blood. Her breathing already returned to baseline. She was the reserve, the backup, the one who'd kept herself intact in case the fight had gone south and someone needed to pull the others out. Tao was licking his foreleg. The Duchess's bite had broken the skin and left a half-moon of puncture marks that oozed clear fluid. It hurt. He licked it with the obsessive focus of a young animal experiencing a real wound for the first time. The confusion of pain, the frustration of a body that won't cooperate, the dawning realization that fighting is not the same as play fighting, and the things that bite back don't stop when you yelp. But he'd charged the matriarch, and he'd survived. And somewhere in his 3-year-old brain, a circuit was forming that would eventually make him a dominant male. I hit something bigger than me. It hurt. I'm still here. Zuri lay 10 feet from Kamau. Not at the perimeter, not at the edge. 10 feet from the dominant male, inside the inner circle, in a spot that would have been unthinkable 12 hours ago. She'd earned it. One charge. One blindside hit on the most dangerous hyena in the clan. One moment where she chose the pride over herself. Kamau had watched her do it. He'd seen her sprint from the flank, seen her hit the Duchess, seen her plant herself between the matriarch and the downed Tao. He hadn't acknowledged it. Lions don't give medals. But the acknowledgement was in the space. The physical space she now occupied. Closer. Inside. That was enough. The sun cleared the tree line at 6:23 a.m. The light hit the Savuti plain and turned it from gray to gold in the span of a minute. One of those African mornings where the world looks like it was painted by someone who just discovered the color yellow. The grass glowed. The distant mopane trees threw long shadows that pointed west like fingers. A pair of tawny eagles circled overhead, waiting for the lions to leave so they could pick the carcass clean. The air smelled different in the morning. Cleaner. The overnight dew had settled the dust and the blood and the chemical fog of predator musk that had hung over the kill site for hours. Now it smelled like wet grass and warm earth and the faint, sweet decay of the carcass. Not rotten yet, just turning, the first enzymes breaking down the remaining tissue. A dung beetle the size of a quarter worked the edge of the buffalo's rib cage, rolling a ball of dried blood and dirt, with the single-minded determination of a thing that has one job and intends to do it perfectly. Vultures arrived at 6:41. White-backed vultures, 12 of them, landing in the mopane trees with the heavy, ungainly flapping of birds, built for soaring, not for landing on branches. They sat in the canopy and waited with the patience of animals that have evolved to eat last. No rush. The lions would leave eventually. They always leave. And when they do, the vultures descend. And when the vultures leave, the beetles take over. And when the beetles are done, the soil absorbs the rest. Nothing in Africa is wasted. Nothing. Kamau ate, finally. He tore into what remained of the buffalo. Mostly ribs and spine now, the best pieces long gone to hyena bellies. And he ate without rushing, without guarding, without the frantic urgency of a predator expecting competition. He ate like a king eating breakfast in his own dining room. Because that's what this was. The females ate after him. Nala first, then Imara, then Sefu, Desta and Zuri. Tao last. The hierarchy, observed. The order, maintained. The ancient rules of lion society functioning exactly as they were designed to function. The strong eat first, the loyal eat next, and everyone eats. From the east, maybe half a mile out, a single hyena watched. A scout, one of the Duchess's habitual patrol animals, a young female with a torn ear who made this circuit every morning, checking the boundaries, reading the landscape. She stood in the grass with just her head visible, her rounded ears catching the morning sounds, her nose processing the wall of lion scent that now covered the kill site like a coat of paint. She watched for 4 minutes. Then she turned and trotted back east, toward the core of the hyena territory, carrying information in her body and her nose and her brain, that would reach the Duchess within the hour. The lions are still there. There are 6 of them now. The male is on the kill. The females are marking. The Duchess would process this. She'd adjust. She was too smart, too experienced, too successful a matriarch to do anything else. The clan would pull back. Not retreat. Hyenas don't permanently retreat from anything. They'd pull back, tighten their range, focus their hunting on the eastern plains, where the buffalo herds were thicker and the lion presence was thinner. They'd avoid direct confrontation with the full pride. For now, because the Duchess understood something that Kamau also understood, something that every animal on the Savuti plain understood in its bones if not in its brain. This wasn't over. It would never be over. The war between lions and hyenas didn't have a final chapter. It had seasons, chapters of dominance and chapters of retreat, advances and withdrawals, victories that lasted until the next defeat, and defeats that lasted until the next victory. The balance shifts, always has. Since the first lion and the first hyena stood over the same carcass on the same patch of African dirt 1,000,000 years ago, and discovered that they wanted the same thing and neither was willing to give it up. 3 weeks later, the Savuti plain at dusk. The sky stacked in bands of color, red at the horizon, orange above, then purple, then the deep blue-black of space where the first stars were appearing like pinpricks in a dark cloth. Venus hung low in the west, bright and steady, the way it's hung every evening since before anything on this plain had a name. The hyenas were still there. Of course they were. You don't erase a clan of 50 from a landscape by winning one fight. They'd pulled back, yes, tightened their hunting range, avoided the western boundary where Kamau's scent marks were fresh and concentrated, but they were there. Every night their laughter rolled across the plain. Every morning their tracks appeared in the dust, parallel to the lion territory, circling it, testing the edges the way water tests a dam. The Duchess was still leading. Her body showed no visible damage from Zuri's hit, though she moved differently now. A slight hesitation before committing to a direction, a tendency to check her flanks more often. Not fear, caution. The upgraded caution of an animal that had been blindsided once and would not be blindsided again. Her clan was intact. The 2 injured hyenas had recovered, the one with the crushed ribs slowly, painfully, with 3 weeks of limited movement, but she was back on her feet, feeding, functional. The other one's shoulder healed clean. Hyenas heal fast. They have to. In a world where your survival strategy is to pick fights with animals twice your size, you either recover quick or you die slow. The Duchess had adjusted her strategy. She'd moved the clan's primary hunting grounds 2 miles east into a belt of open grassland where wildebeest herds congregated around a series of shallow pans. Good hunting, fewer lions. The kills came easier here. No 500-pound males contesting the spoils, no organized prides waiting for the clan to exhaust itself. Just the hyenas and the prey and the ancient equation of speed versus stamina. She still sent scouts west. Every 2 days, a young female or a low-ranking male would trot along the territorial boundary, nose to the ground, cataloging scent marks, reading the chemical newspaper that Kamau published twice daily on every tree and termite mound within his range. The scouts came back with the same report each time. Active, fresh, 6 signatures, not 4. The Duchess absorbed this and moved on. She had 40 mouths to feed, and a clan hierarchy to maintain, and a pregnant subordinate who'd need protection during denning. She had problems that were bigger than one lost carcass and one lost fight. But she hadn't forgotten. Hyenas don't forget. Their social memory, the ability to track relationships, alliances, debts, and threats across months and years, is one of the most sophisticated in the animal kingdom. Researchers have compared it to primate cognition. The Duchess remembered the smell of each lion, the speed of Kamau's charge, the angle of Zuri's hit. She filed it all, and somewhere in the network of neurons behind those dark, intelligent eyes, she was already running scenarios for the next encounter. Not today, not this month, but eventually, because the Savuti isn't big enough for both of them to stop looking over their shoulders. The lions had settled into the new order, 6 adults, holding a territory that comfortably supported 4, which meant they hunted more often and ate faster, and the margin for error was thinner. Kamau's shoulder was healing. The infection had drained naturally, leaving a concave scar that would be visible for the rest of his life. He moved well, not perfectly. Well, there's a difference at 11 years old. Perfect left 3 years ago. well as what remains. Nala's knee would never fully recover. The swelling had reduced, but the joint was permanently compromised. A ligament tear that in a human would require surgery and in a lioness required nothing but adjustment. She compensated, shifted her weight, changed her hunting angles, adapted because adaptation is what lionesses do. It's what they've always done. The males fight for territory. The females figure out how to live on it. Tao was growing. His mane had thickened, still patchy, still adolescent, but filling in around the jawline in a way that would, in 2 years, make him look serious. He hunted with the pride now, badly. He'd botched 3 stalks in 2 weeks, once by charging too early, once by approaching from downwind, once by tripping over his own feet in the grass and landing face first in the dirt, while a wildebeest stared at him with what could only be described as contempt. He'd learn, or he wouldn't. Either way, the Savuti didn't wait for anyone. Zuri hunted. She hunted well. She'd found her position, the left flank, the outrider, the one who swept wide and cut off escape routes. It suited her. She was fast, quiet, and she had a patience that the older lions recognized and respected. She didn't force the action. She waited for it to come to her, and when it came, she was already where she needed to be. On this evening, 3 weeks after the retaliation, on a Savuti dusk that looked like every other dusk and none of them, Kamau climbed the kopje, the same gravel mound he'd lain on the night he heard the hyenas hunting, 15 feet above the plain, a bump in the landscape that meant nothing to a satellite and everything to a lion. He stood at the top, alone. The pride was below, Nala and Imara resting in the grass, Seifu grooming Desta's neck, pulling burrs from the short fur behind her ears, Tao lying on his back with his legs in the air, which was not a dignified posture for a future dominant, but was apparently comfortable. Zuri sitting upright, watching the eastern tree line, as she always watched the eastern tree line. Kamau faced east. The wind was warm. It carried the smell of dust and dry grass and the distant, lingering musk of a hyena patrol that had passed 3 hours ago. Somewhere out there, a mile, maybe 2, the Duchess was doing what she always did, leading, hunting, adapting, planning the next move in a game that had no final move. From the east, carried on that warm wind, came a sound, faint, rising, falling, laughter, the hyenas, calling, not close, not far, present, the way they'd always been present, the way they'd always be. Kamau listened. His ears rotated toward the sound. His eyes, amber, rimmed with the scars of 11 years, narrowed against the dying light. He drew a breath, deep, filling his chest, his diaphragm, the resonating cavity of his skull, and he answered. One roar, long, low, a sound that started in his belly and rolled out of him like a wave breaking on a shore, carrying across the plain, over the grass, through the mopane trees, past the hyenas and their laughter, and their endless, tireless patience, until it reached the horizon and dissolved into the darkening sky. Not a challenge, not a warning, a statement. I'm still here. The laughter continued, distant, steady, unchanged. The roar faded. The plain went quiet. Kamau stood on the kopje until the last light disappeared. Then he walked down, slowly, and rejoined his pride. Nala pressed her forehead against his shoulder, the bad shoulder, gently. He let her. The stars came out. The Savuti exhaled, and 6 lions lay in the grass together, breathing the same air, listening to the same night, surrounded by the same enemies that had been there yesterday and would be there tomorrow. In the savannah, power doesn't belong to whoever wins a single fight. It belongs to whoever learns from the loss and comes back harder. The hyenas know this. The lions know this. The grass knows this. It burns every dry season and grows back thicker. Nothing here ends. Everything here continues. And on a gravel kopje 15 feet above the Botswana dirt, the scratches from a lion's claws are still fresh. If this story hit you somewhere, and I think it did because you're still here, do me a favor. Hit subscribe. I tell these stories every week, and the next one is already keeping me up at night. Drop a comment and tell me, lions or hyenas? Who do you root for when both sides are just trying to survive? I want to hear it. Go. In the savannah, power doesn't belong to whoever wins a single fight. It belongs to whoever learns from the loss and comes back stronger.